For centuries, human history has followed a strange and repeating pattern. Great empires rise. They expand, they dominate the world, and for a moment, they appear unstoppable. Rome once believed its power would last forever. The Ottoman Empire ruled vast continents for centuries. The British Empire once controlled nearly a quarter of the world. Each of them believed they had built something permanent, something unbreakable. But history had other plans. Because every empire, no matter how powerful, eventually reaches a turning point. And today, many people are asking a similar question about the modern world. A question that would have sounded impossible just a few decades ago. Could the United States one day follow the same path? To understand that question, we must go back to the moment when American power reached its peak. The year was 1945. World War II had just ended. Europe was devastated. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. Germany was defeated. Japan was shattered. Across the world, economies had collapsed. But the United States stood almost untouched. Its factories were intact. Its industry was booming. Its military had become the most powerful force on Earth. At that moment, America was responsible for nearly half of the world's industrial production. Half. No empire in modern history had ever held such economic dominance. The U.S. dollar soon became the backbone of the global financial system. Through institutions like the IMF and World Bank, American influence shaped the post-war world. American corporations expanded across continents. Coca-Cola, Ford, McDonald's, Apple, Nike. Hollywood films reached every corner of the planet. American music, fashion, and technology shaped global culture. For millions of people, the United States became more than just a country. It became an idea, a symbol. The promise that anyone, anywhere, could build a better life. This promise became known as the American Dream. A house, a stable job, a car in the driveway, and a future brighter than the past. For decades, that dream felt real. But history rarely moves in straight lines. And slowly, almost invisibly at first, small cracks began to appear. By the 1970s, the global economy was changing. American factories that once powered the world began to face new competition. Manufacturing started moving overseas. Companies searched for cheaper labor. New industrial powers began to rise. Cities that once symbolized American strength started to struggle. Detroit, once known as the heart of the global automobile industry, began to decline. Factories closed, neighborhoods emptied, entire blocks were abandoned. The city that had once built the machines of modern America now stood filled with silent buildings. And Detroit was not alone. Across the country, the industrial backbone of the United States was slowly weakening. Meanwhile, wealth began concentrating in fewer hands. The middle class, once the foundation of American stability, started shrinking. For many families, the American dream began to feel further away than ever before. At the same time, another challenge was quietly growing: debt. The United States economy remained enormous. But year after year, government spending grew faster than revenue. National debt climbed higher and higher, trillions of dollars, then tens of trillions. Today, the number has become almost unimaginable, more than $34 trillion, and still rising, every second. Some economists argue that large economies can sustain high debt levels, but history tells a different story. Overextended empires often face the same problem: too many commitments, too many costs, too many global responsibilities. Rome faced it, Spain faced it, Britain faced it. And when financial pressure builds, even the strongest empires begin to weaken. But perhaps the greatest challenge facing modern America is not economic. It is internal. Throughout history, great powers have often collapsed not because of foreign enemies, but because of internal division. Today, the United States is experiencing one of the most politically polarized periods in its modern history. Political disagreements have turned into cultural conflicts. Media ecosystems divide citizens into separate realities. Social media amplifies anger, fear, and mistrust. Elections that once represented democratic competition now feel like existential battles. Many Americans no longer simply disagree with each other. They struggle to trust each other. And when trust begins to disappear, the foundations of a nation begin to shake. At the same time, the world outside America is changing rapidly. For decades after the Cold War, the United States stood alone as the world's only superpower. But that era may be coming to an end. A new global competitor has emerged, China. Over the past 4 decades, China has experienced one of the fastest economic expansions in human history. Hundreds of millions of people were lifted out of poverty. Massive cities appeared almost overnight. Technological giants began competing with Western companies. China is investing heavily in artificial intelligence, infrastructure, and global trade networks. Projects like the Belt and Road Initiative aim to reshape global commerce. And with economic power comes military power. China is rapidly modernizing its armed forces. The global balance of power is slowly shifting. The world is no longer unipolar. It is becoming multipolar. But some analysts believe the greatest risk for the United States may not come from long-term economic competition. Instead, it could come from a single geopolitical crisis. A war, particularly one in the Middle East. One potential flashpoint often discussed is Iran. Iran is not a small regional actor. It is a nation of nearly 90 million people. It possesses a large missile arsenal. Despite decades of sanctions, it has continued developing technology, science, and medical nuclear research. It also maintains influence through networks of regional allies across the Middle East. And perhaps most importantly, Iran sits near one of the most strategic energy corridors on Earth, the Persian Gulf, a region through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply flows. If a major conflict were to erupt there, the consequences could be global. Military bases across the region could become immediate targets. Oil shipping lanes could be disrupted, energy prices could skyrocket, and the global economy could face massive shockwaves. For the United States, such a war could become extraordinarily expensive. Not billions, but potentially trillions of dollars. History has shown how long and costly wars can reshape great powers. Vietnam deeply divided American society. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan lasted decades and cost trillions. But a larger regional conflict could strain the system even further. Military deployments would expand, economic pressure would grow, debt would increase, and political tensions at home could intensify. Over time, the United States might begin reducing its global military presence. Bases could close, troops could withdraw, strategic influence in certain regions might decline. Meanwhile, rival powers could expand their own influence. And inside America, political division could deepen even further. In extreme scenarios imagined by some analysts, regional tensions between states could grow stronger. Economic inequality could widen. Public trust in institutions could erode. History reminds us that when powerful nations face external pressure and internal division at the same time, their stability can begin to fracture. Empires rarely collapse overnight. They decline slowly, gradually, almost invisibly. Until one day the world realizes that the balance of power has already changed. But history also teaches another lesson. Decline is not inevitable. The United States has faced enormous crises before. The Great Depression, World War II, the Civil Rights struggles, the Vietnam War, the financial crisis of 2008. Each time, the country adapted and rebuilt. America still possesses powerful advantages. World-leading universities, technological innovation, a dynamic private sector, and one of the largest economies on Earth. So perhaps the real question is not whether America will collapse. The real question is something deeper. Can the United States reinvent itself once again? Because in history, some empires fade into memory, but others transform and rise again in new forms. And the story of the 21st century may depend on which path America chooses. The future of global power is still being written, and the final chapter has not yet been decided.